Welcome to Sleepy Travel Stories. Tonight, let me take you on a journey to a faraway place. Close your eyes, relax, and let the world drift away. The day begins to release its hold on Marrakech as your taxi winds through streets that seem to pulse with the rhythm of centuries, and you find yourself leaning forward slightly, watching through the dusty window as the world outside transforms from the familiar chaos of the airport into something altogether more mysterious. The driver, a man with silver threading through his dark hair, navigates these narrow passages with the confidence of someone who has traced these routes countless times, his hands steady on the wheel as he guides you deeper into the Medina. The late afternoon sun casts everything in shades of terracotta and gold, and you begin to understand why they call this the Red City. The buildings rise on either side like ancient sentinels, their walls painted in hues that shift from deep ochre to pale salmon, from burnt sienna to the softest blush of dawn. Each surface seems to hold the light differently, absorbing it, reflecting it, playing with it in ways that make you blink and look again, wondering if you imagined that particular shade of amber dancing across a weathered doorway. As the taxi slows and finally comes to rest beside a wall that stretches up toward the darkening sky, you realize that your destination reveals nothing of itself from the street. There is only this expanse of rose-colored stone, broken by a single wooden door painted in deep forest green, its surface worn smooth by countless hands and decorated with intricate metalwork that catches what remains of the daylight. The driver turns to you with a gentle smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and speaks a few words in Arabic before switching to French, then English, gesturing toward the door with obvious pride, as if he himself has delivered you to a secret that few are privileged to discover. Your feet touch the cobblestones, and immediately you feel the day's heat rising up through the soles of your shoes, the stones having spent hours soaking up the Moroccan sun, and now releasing it slowly, reluctantly, into the cooling air. The driver retrieves your luggage with practiced efficiency, and you find yourself standing before that mysterious green door, your heart beating just a little faster with anticipation, though you cannot quite say why. The brass knocker is heavy in your hand, shaped like the hand of Fatima, its surface polished smooth by years of use. When you lift it and let it fall, the sound that emerges is deep and resonant, echoing not just against the door, but seeming to penetrate the very walls themselves, announcing your arrival to whatever lies beyond. For a moment, there is only silence, and you become aware of the sounds of the Medina around you, the distant call of a muezzin beginning the evening prayer, the soft shuffle of footsteps on stone, the gentle murmur of voices speaking in Arabic, the occasional laugh of children playing somewhere in the labyrinth of streets. Then the door opens, and you are greeted by a woman whose smile seems to illuminate the gathering dusk. She is dressed in a traditional kaftan of deep blue, embroidered with silver thread that catches the light as she moves, and her hair is covered by a silk scarf that frames her face with elegant simplicity. Her hands, when she extends them in welcome, are warm and soft, and she speaks your name as if she has been waiting for you not just today, but for years. She introduces herself as Aisha and explains that she manages this Riad, this hidden palace that has been her family's responsibility for 3 generations. Her English is careful and melodic, touched with the accent of someone who learned the language from books before mastering it through conversation. And as she speaks, she guides you through the doorway and into a world that seems to exist outside of time altogether. The first thing that strikes you is the sudden coolness, as if you have stepped not just through a door, but through a portal into a different season entirely. The thick walls of the Riad have spent the day protecting this interior space from the heat, creating a microclimate that breathes with its own gentle rhythm. Your skin, still warm from the street, begins to adjust to this new temperature, and you feel your shoulders relax in ways you had not realized they needed to. But it is not just the coolness that takes your breath away. As your eyes adjust to the softer light, you realize that you are standing at the edge of a courtyard that rises up 4 stories around you, each level lined with arched galleries supported by slender columns carved from what appears to be pale stone. The proportions are so perfectly balanced that the space feels both intimate and grand, as if whoever designed it understood some fundamental truth about how humans move through space, how we need both shelter and sky, both enclosure and openness. At the center of this courtyard lies a fountain, its surface perfectly still in this moment, reflecting the square of deepening sky visible far above. The fountain is surrounded by orange trees planted in large ceramic pots glazed in deep blue and white, their leaves rustling softly in what must be the slightest of breezes, though you cannot feel it yet. The scent of the orange blossoms mingles with something else, something you cannot quite identify, but that speaks of jasmine and rosewater, of mint and cedar wood, of spices whose names you do not know, but whose essence seems to welcome you home. Aisha leads you slowly around the edge of the courtyard, her footsteps silent on the intricate mosaic that covers the floor. The tilework beneath your feet is a marvel of geometric precision, thousands of tiny pieces fitted together to create patterns that seem to shift and flow as you walk across them. Blues and whites predominate, but as you look more closely, you begin to notice threads of green and gold woven throughout, creating depth and movement that draws your eye inward and outward simultaneously. The walls around you are covered in zellige tiles that climb halfway to the first floor, their surfaces catching and fracturing the light from the brass lanterns that hang at regular intervals along the galleries above. Above the tilework, the walls are painted in warm white plaster, carved with intricate arabesques that seem to breathe and flow in the gentle illumination. Each element works in harmony with the others, creating a sense of unity and peace that settles into your bones without effort. As you walk, Aisha shares the history of this place in her musical voice, explaining how it was built in the 17th century by a merchant who made his fortune trading in gold and ivory across the Sahara. She tells you how each room was designed with a specific purpose, how the thick walls and high ceilings work together to create natural cooling, how the fountain at the center serves not just as decoration, but as a source of humidity that keeps the air comfortable even in the height of summer. But more than the facts, it is her obvious love for this place that colors every word she speaks. You can hear it in the way she pronounces the Arabic names for different architectural elements, in the pride that brightens her voice when she points out a particularly fine example of carved plasterwork, in the gentle way she touches the walls as she passes, as if greeting an old friend. The light continues to fade as she shows you around the ground floor, pointing out the various salons and dining areas that open onto the central courtyard through horseshoe arches framed in carved stone. Each room has its own personality, its own combination of colors and textures, but all share the same sense of timeless elegance. Low banquettes covered in rich fabrics line the walls, scattered with cushions in jewel tones that seem to glow in the lamplight. Brass tables gleam between the seating areas, their surfaces reflecting the patterns of light and shadow that dance across the carved ceilings above. In one salon, she pauses to adjust a cushion that has shifted slightly out of place, and you notice how every detail has been considered, from the way the rugs overlap to create layers of warmth and color on the floor, to the positioning of the brass lanterns that provide pools of golden light without overwhelming the natural shadows that gather in the corners of the room. As you move through these spaces, you become aware of the sounds that fill them, the gentle splash of water from the fountain, the whisper of fabric brushing against fabric as Aisha moves, the distant sounds of the Medina beyond the walls, muffled but not entirely shut out. It is as if the Riad exists in perfect balance between the outer world and this inner sanctuary, allowing just enough of the city's energy to penetrate these walls to remind you where you are, while protecting you from its intensity. The air itself seems different here, not just cooler but somehow softer, as if it has been filtered through centuries of peaceful living. You find yourself breathing more deeply, more slowly, your body automatically adjusting to the rhythm of this place. The hurry and stress of travel, the noise and confusion of airports and crowds, all of that begins to feel like something that happened to someone else in some other lifetime. Aisha notices your growing sense of calm and smiles, explaining that this is what happens to everyone who enters a traditional Riad for the first time. The architecture itself, she says, is designed to create this feeling of peace, this sense of being held and protected while still remaining connected to the sky above and the earth below. The builders understood something about human nature, about our need for beauty and order and tranquility, and they embedded that understanding into every arch and column, every tile and carved detail. As she speaks, you find yourself looking up toward the galleries above, where soft lights have begun to appear in the windows of the guest rooms, creating a warm constellation around the courtyard. The sky visible through the open roof has deepened from blue to indigo, and the first stars are beginning to appear, tiny points of light that seem to mirror the brass lamps scattered throughout the Riad's various levels. The fountain at the center of the courtyard begins to play now, activated by some timer that Aisha does not need to think about, and the sound of water falling into water adds a new layer to the evening's gentle symphony. The sound is not overwhelming or attention-grabbing, but rather something that settles into the background of consciousness, providing a constant, soothing rhythm that seems to slow your heartbeat to match its pace. Orange blossoms release their fragrance more generously now as the temperature continues to drop, and you catch hints of other scents as well. The clean smell of the fountain's water, the earthy aroma of the potted plants that line the galleries, the faint sweetness of jasmine beginning to bloom somewhere in the upper reaches of the building. Aicha leads you toward a staircase that curves gracefully upward along one wall of the courtyard, its steps worn smooth by generations of feet, its brass handrail polished to a warm glow. As you climb, you feel the day's tensions continuing to release from your shoulders and back, your body responding to the invitation of this place to simply be, to simply exist in this moment, without worry or hurry, or the need to be anywhere else. From the first floor gallery, the view down into the courtyard reveals new patterns in the tilework, new relationships between the various elements of the design. The fountain, seen from above, shows itself to be an 8-pointed star, its edges defined by bands of deep blue tile that seem to draw the eye inward toward the central point where the water rises and falls with hypnotic regularity. The sound of water below creates a gentle rhythm that seems to guide your movements as you eventually make your way back down to the ground floor. Your footsteps, soft against the worn stone steps, echo just slightly in the enclosed space. The Riad feels like a sanctuary now, its walls holding the coolness of evening, while the world beyond begins to shift into the deeper mysteries of night. At the heavy wooden door that leads out into the Medina, you pause for just a moment. The metal handle, cool and smooth from countless hands, turns with a soft click that seems to release you into an entirely different world. The contrast is immediate and wonderful. Where the Riad held stillness and measured space, the Medina unfolds before you like a living maze, its narrow passages breathing with their own ancient rhythm. The lane immediately outside is barely wide enough for two people to pass comfortably. High walls rise on either side, their surfaces a patchwork of different eras and repairs. Some sections show the original tadelact plaster, smooth and gleaming faintly in the dim light, while others reveal patches where newer mud brick has been fitted between stones, worn smooth by centuries of weather. Above, the walls lean slightly toward each other, creating a sense of enclosure that feels protective rather than confining. Your feet find their way naturally along the uneven stones of the pathway. Each step reveals the subtle geography of the lane, stones worn into gentle depressions by generations of footfalls, slight rises where the path accommodates the natural contours of the earth beneath, smooth patches polished by time and weather. The stones themselves tell stories through their surfaces. Some are pale limestone that seems to hold the last traces of daylight. Others are darker, more porous rock that has absorbed decades of desert dust and rain. The air here moves differently than in the open spaces of the Riad's courtyard. It flows along the passages, like water finding its course, carrying with it the layered scents of the Medina. There's the warm smell of bread from a baker's oven somewhere nearby, the yeasty richness mixing with hints of cumin and coriander that seem to have soaked into the very walls over years of spice merchants and cooking fires. Underneath these more obvious aromas lies something earthier, the smell of stone and clay, of walls that have stood since before memory, holding within their substance the accumulated breath of countless days and nights. The sound of your footsteps creates a gentle percussion against the background symphony of the Medina settling into evening. Somewhere in the distance, a door closes with a soft thud. From behind shuttered windows comes the occasional murmur of voices, the clink of tea glasses, the rustle of fabric. These sounds don't intrude, but rather weave themselves into the atmosphere, reminding you that this maze of passages is home to families, to lives unfolding in their own quiet rhythms just beyond these walls. As you move deeper into the network of lanes, the passage branches and curves in ways that seem to follow some logic older than city planning. You choose your direction by instinct rather than destination, allowing your feet to carry you where they will. The lane narrows further, then opens slightly into a small space where several passages converge. Here, an ancient olive tree has somehow found purchase in what must have once been a tiny courtyard. Its gnarled trunk emerges from a small patch of earth, and its branches reach upward to where they can catch glimpses of sky between the surrounding rooftops. The tree's presence transforms this small convergence into something magical. Its leaves whisper softly when touched by the evening breeze, a sound like gentle rain or distant applause. Some of the branches have grown so old and heavy that they rest against the adjacent walls, creating natural bridges between the passages. The bark is deeply textured, marked with the intricate patterns that speak of decades weathering the desert sun and the brief, precious rains. Beneath the tree, the stones of the ground are different, darker, enriched by years of fallen leaves and the tree's patient transformation of sunlight into shelter. You pause here, drawn by the sense of age and persistence that this place embodies. The walls around this small space are lower, allowing more light to filter down, and you can see how different inhabitants have left their marks over time. A small niche carved into one wall that might once have held a lantern, iron rings set into the stone that could have tethered animals or supported awnings, patches of different colored plaster that speak of repairs and renovations across the generations. From this small plaza, you choose another lane, this one leading slightly upward along what must be a gentle rise in the land beneath the Medina. The incline is so gradual as to be almost imperceptible, but you can feel it in the way your weight shifts with each step, in the subtle change in perspective as the passages around you begin to reveal new angles and viewpoints. The walls here show different construction techniques, some sections built with the regular coursing of cut stone, others showing the more irregular patterns of fieldstone fitted together like puzzle pieces. The quality of sound changes as you climb. Your footsteps take on a slightly different resonance, and the distant sounds of the Medina, the closing doors, the murmured conversations, the occasional call from one rooftop to another, seem to layer differently in the air. It's as if you're ascending not just through physical space, but through different strata of the city's daily rhythm. moving from the ground level sounds of doorways and immediate passages into the more aerial realm of rooftops and evening breezes. Along this ascending passage, small details catch the available light in ways that create tiny moments of beauty. A brass door knocker, green with age, hangs against weathered wood like a piece of ancient jewelry. Small plants have found footholds in cracks between stones, not the dramatic growth of the olive tree below, but smaller, more delicate presences that speak of life's persistent ability to find its way into even the most urban spaces. Tiny ferns unfurl from mortar joints, and small succulents create miniature gardens in the spaces where walls meet at slightly imperfect angles. The passage curves to the right, following what might be the foundation line of some long demolished building, and suddenly opens into a view that takes your breath away. You've emerged onto what might once have been a rooftop terrace, now incorporated into the network of passages, but still retaining its elevated character. From here, the Medina spreads out below and around you, like a three-dimensional map of human habitation, its rooflines creating a landscape as varied and beautiful as any natural terrain. The rooftops tell their own stories through their surfaces and structures. Some are flat terraces defined by low parapets, their surfaces scattered with the implements of daily life, laundry lines strung between posts, small gardens in terracotta pots, low stools placed to catch the morning or evening light. Others showed the gentle curves of barrel vaults or the more complex geometry of domed spaces, their surfaces painted in colors that have been softened by weather into subtle variations of earth tones, pale ochres, muted roses, soft grays that might once have been white or blue. Between the rooftops, the passages of the Medina reveal themselves as dark channels, like the negative space in a vast, complex sculpture. From this height, you can trace the logic of the lanes as they curve and branch, following pathways that might have begun as animal tracks or the natural drainage patterns of rare but precious rainfall. Some passages disappear entirely under buildings that have grown to span from one side to the other, creating tunnels that add another layer to the Medina's three-dimensional maze. The evening light, now deepening toward true twilight, transforms everything it touches. The pale surfaces of walls and rooftops seem to glow with stored warmth, while the shadowed passages become pools of soft darkness that invite rather than forbid exploration. Television antennas and satellite dishes create their own geometric patterns against the sky, reminders that this ancient space continues to evolve and adapt, incorporating the needs of contemporary life into structures that have sheltered human communities for centuries. From somewhere below comes the call to evening prayer, the voice floating up through the passages with a clarity and beauty that seems to give the entire Medina a moment of collective breath. The call rises and falls in patterns that feel as ancient as the stones themselves. And for these few minutes, the other sounds of the city seem to step back, creating space for this daily reminder of time's passage and the rhythms that connect one day to the next. As the call fades, you find yourself naturally beginning to move again, following the passage as it continues along this elevated route through the Medina's upper levels. The path here is different from the ground level lanes, sometimes crossing over buildings on what might have been bridges or elevated walkways, sometimes following rooftop terraces that have been adapted into public passages. The stones under your feet show different patterns of wear, smoothed by fewer footsteps, but polished by more direct exposure to sun and wind and the occasional rain that transforms the desert city into something briefly green and fragrant. The elevated pathway curves gently to the right, following the natural contours of buildings that seem to grow from the earth itself rather than having been constructed upon it. Your hand trails along a low parapet wall, fingers reading the texture of clay that has been shaped by countless hands across generations. The surface is warm still, holding the day's heat like a ceramic vessel fresh from the kiln. And beneath your palm, you can feel the subtle undulations where thumbs pressed and smoothed the mixture of earth and straw and time into something both functional and beautiful. From this height, the sounds of the Medina below reach you differently. The calls of vendors and the rhythm of daily commerce seem softer here, filtered through layers of air and distance until they become almost musical. A donkey's gentle protest echoes from somewhere in the maze below, followed by the patient murmur of its handler's voice. Children's laughter bubbles up from an unseen courtyard, bright notes that seem to catch and scatter on the evening breeze like seeds from a flowering tree. The walkway widens slightly as it approaches what appears to be a small plaza built into the rooftop level of the Medina. Here, several pathways converge, creating a space where travelers between the upper terraces might pause and orient themselves. Ancient olive trees grow in large earthenware pots, their gnarled trunks speaking of decades spent in this aerial garden. Their leaves whisper softly in the breeze, a sound like gentle rainfall on dry earth, and their branches create pools of shadow that shift and dance across the worn stone pavement. You pause here, drawn by the unexpected tranquility of this hidden crossroads. From one of the potted trees, a small bird, perhaps a sparrow or finch, watches you with bright, curious eyes before fluttering to another perch with a soft rustle of wings. The movement draws your attention to a narrow opening between two buildings that you hadn't noticed at first glance. Unlike the grand archways that mark the entrances to major buildings in the Medina below, this entrance is modest, almost secretive. It's barely wide enough for two people to pass through side by side, and it's partially concealed by a curtain of jasmine vines that have grown wild and thick over what must be many seasons. Something about this hidden threshold calls to you. Perhaps it's the way that jasmine flowers seem to glow with their own soft light in the gathering dusk, or the faint sound of water that seems to emanate from somewhere beyond the vine curtain. You approach slowly, your footsteps muffled by fallen petals that have created a natural carpet across the stones. The scent of jasmine grows stronger as you draw near, but beneath it you detect other fragrances, the green smell of growing things, the mineral scent of water over stone, and something else, something warm and welcoming that speaks of shelter and sanctuary. Gently, you push aside the curtain of vines, and the jasmine releases a shower of tiny white flowers that drift around you like snow in slow motion. Some catch in your hair, others brush against your shoulders before settling silently to the ground. Beyond the natural screen, you discover a sight that takes your breath away. A hidden Riad, completely invisible from any of the surrounding pathways. Nestled into what must be the heart of this particular quarter of the Medina. The entrance passage is short, perhaps only 10 or 15 steps long, and it's lined with intricate zellige tile work that catches what little light filters through the jasmine canopy. The tiles are predominantly deep blue and white, arranged in geometric patterns that seem to shift and flow as you pass by them. Your fingers trace the edges of these tiny ceramic pieces, each one hand-cut and placed with precision that speaks of master craftsmen who understood that beauty lies in both the grand vision and the smallest details. As you emerge from the passage into the central courtyard of the hidden Riad, you feel as though you've stepped into a different world entirely. The space is intimate, perhaps 30 feet square, surrounded on all sides by 2 stories of rooms whose doorways are marked by horseshoe arches and whose windows are protected by carved wooden screens that filter light into intricate shadow patterns. But it's the garden at the center of this secret courtyard that truly captures your attention. Unlike the grand riads you might have glimpsed through open doorways in the Medina below, this hidden courtyard is not built around a fountain or reflecting pool. Instead, it houses what appears to be an ancient garden that has been lovingly tended for generations. Orange trees, heavy with fruit, create natural alcoves where stone benches invite rest and contemplation. Between them, raised beds overflow with herbs and flowers, mint and lavender, roses and geraniums, plants whose fragrances mingle in the still air to create a perfume that is both complex and soothing. The sound of water that drew you to this place reveals its source. Not a dramatic fountain, but a simple stone channel that runs along the base of the surrounding walls. Water moves through this channel with barely a murmur, its movement so gentle that you have to watch carefully to see the flow. Every so often, small outlets allow the water to trickle into the garden beds, providing life to the plants through a system of irrigation that is both practical and beautiful in its simplicity. You step further into the courtyard, your feet finding a pathway made of small river stones set into packed earth. The stones have been worn smooth by countless footsteps, and they're still warm from the day's sun. As you walk, your movement releases new fragrances from the plants you pass. The sharp brightness of crushed mint where your sleeve brushes against a sprawling bush. The honey sweetness of jasmine flowers that seem to bloom in every corner of this secret garden. The walls surrounding this hidden sanctuary rise up around you, but rather than feeling enclosed, you feel embraced. The building itself seems to lean inward slightly, as if protecting this precious green space from the outside world. On the upper level, you can see that some of the rooms have small balconies where terracotta pots hold cascading vines and flowering plants that add to the garden's vertical tapestry. One of the ground level rooms has its door standing open, and through it you glimpse the soft glow of what might be oil lamps or candles. The light is warm and golden, spilling out across the threshold and illuminating a beautiful carpet that extends from the interior out onto the courtyard stones. The carpet's pattern is intricate but not overwhelming. Deep reds and blues and golds that seem to capture and reflect the gentle light, creating an invitation that's almost impossible to resist. You approach this welcoming doorway slowly, taking time to notice the details that make this space so special. The door frame is carved wood, weathered to a silvery grey that speaks of age and endurance. Geometric patterns flow along its edges, but unlike the bold statements of major architectural features, these carvings are subtle, meant to be discovered rather than announced. Small tiles are inlaid here and there within the wood, catching the light like jewels and adding unexpected touches of colour: turquoise and deep green, amber and coral. From within the room comes the faint sound of settling timbers, the almost inaudible creaks and sighs that old buildings make as they adjust to the changing temperature of evening. There's also the soft flutter of fabric moving in a gentle air current, and the barely perceptible sound of a flame dancing on a wick. These are the sounds of a living space, a room that exists not as a museum piece, but as a place where people have found comfort and rest. The threshold beneath your feet is worn smooth by generations of crossings, the stone polished to a soft sheen that feels like silk under your shoes. As you pause here, balanced between the garden courtyard and the mysterious interior, you realize that you've discovered something truly special, not just a hidden Riad, but a place that seemed to exist outside of time, where the rhythms of daily life have been slowed to match the gentle pace of growing things and the patient movement of water over stone. The welcome here feels deeper than hospitality. It's the kind of greeting that comes from walls that have sheltered travelers for centuries, from stones that remember every footstep, every pause, every quiet breath drawn in gratitude. You step fully into the courtyard now and immediately sense how this space cradles you differently than the garden you've just left behind. Where the outer garden invited exploration, this inner courtyard offers something more profound: belonging. The courtyard spreads before you in a perfect square, its proportions creating an instant sense of harmony that settles into your bones. 4 covered walkways frame the open center, their horseshoe arches casting pools of shadow that seem to breathe with the gentle evening air. The columns supporting these walkways are slender and elegant, carved from pale limestone that has aged to the color of old parchment, each one unique in its subtle weathering patterns and the way the dying light catches the grain of the stone. Above, the sky has deepened to that particular shade of blue that exists only in the moments between day and night. Not quite cobalt, not quite navy, but something richer and more complex, like velvet that has absorbed starlight. The first stars are beginning to appear, tiny pinpricks of silver that seem to echo the small lanterns beginning to flicker to life in the covered walkways around you. The sound of water draws your attention to the center of the courtyard, where a fountain sits like a jewel in an architectural setting. This isn't the wild cascade you heard in the garden, but something more refined, more intentional. Water rises from a central spout in a gentle arc, falling back into an octagonal basin with the softest possible sound, barely more than a whisper, but constant and rhythmic, like the breathing of the building itself. The basin is lined with intricate zellige tilework in deep blues and greens, each tiny geometric piece hand-cut and fitted with such precision that the patterns seem to flow like water themselves. As you move closer to the fountain, You notice how the sound changes with each step. The acoustics of the courtyard are perfect, shaped by centuries of refinement. The water's gentle splash resonates differently depending on where you stand, sometimes seeming to come from directly beneath your feet, other times appearing to float in the air around you. When you pause at the fountain's edge, the sound creates a perfect sphere of tranquility that seems to extend just far enough to encompass you completely. You rest your hand on the fountain's rim, feeling the cool marble that has been worn smooth by countless other hands seeking the same small comfort. The stone is slightly damp from the fountain's gentle mist, and you can feel the almost imperceptible vibration of the water's movement transmitted through the marble. It's like touching the pulse of the building itself. The covered walkways beckon with their promise of shelter and shadow. You choose one at random and step beneath its protective arch, immediately feeling the temperature drop by several degrees. The transition is luxurious, from the open warmth of the courtyard center to the cool embrace of carved stone and shadow. Your footsteps echo differently here, softer and more muffled, absorbed by the ancient stones and the accumulated silence of centuries. The walkway stretches before you, its length punctuated by a series of identical arches that create a rhythmic play of light and shadow. Each archway frames a perfect view back toward the fountain and the courtyard beyond. But as you walk, these views shift and change subtly, like looking through a series of different lenses, each one revealing some new detail you hadn't noticed before. The walls here are decorated with carved plasterwork so intricate it seems impossible that human hands could have created it. Geometric patterns flow into floral motifs, which transform into calligraphy that you can't read but somehow understand. Speaks of welcome, of peace, of the beauty found in careful attention to detail. The carving is painted in soft colors, muted golds and gentle blues, deep greens and warm terracottas. But age has softened these hues until they seem less like paint than like natural variations in the plaster itself. You pause beside one of the columns, running your fingers along its surface. The stone is cool and slightly rough, textured by time and weather in a way that makes it pleasant to touch. Looking up, you see how the column supports not just the physical weight of the upper floors, but seems to hold up the very sky itself, framing that deepening blue in a perfect arch that makes the approaching night look like a masterpiece hung in a gallery of stone. From this vantage point, you can see into some of the rooms that open onto the courtyard. Doorways stand invitingly ajar, revealing glimpses of interiors lit by the warm glow of oil lamps. You catch sight of low sofas covered in rich fabrics, of brass tables that gleam in the lamplight, of carpets so beautiful they seem like works of art spread casually on ancient floors. These rooms whisper of comfort, of long conversations held in quiet voices, of mint tea served in small glasses that chime softly when they touch. The air here carries different scents than the garden, less green and growing, more refined and complex. There's the sweetness of orange blossom water, perhaps used to clean the marble floors. The woody smoke of sandalwood drifts from somewhere deeper in the building. You detect the faintest trace of rose petals, possibly scattered in one of the rooms, and underneath it all, the clean mineral scent of the fountain's continuously moving water. As you continue your slow circuit of the walkway, you notice how the courtyard reveals itself differently from each new angle. From the northern walkway, the fountain appears perfectly centered and symmetrical. Move to the eastern side, and the play of shadows from the western columns creates dramatic contrasts across the open space. Each viewpoint offers its own composition, its own perfect balance of elements. The light continues to change as evening deepens. The lanterns in the walkways grow brighter by contrast, their warm glow beginning to compete seriously with the fading daylight. These lanterns are works of art themselves, pierced metal that casts intricate patterns of light and shadow on the carved walls, creating a second layer of decoration that shifts and moves as the flames dance within their protective housings. You find yourself naturally slowing your pace, matching your rhythm to that of the fountain, to the gentle evening breeze that stirs the air just enough to keep it fresh and cool. This is a place designed for contemplation, for the kind of deep relaxation that comes not from emptiness, but from perfect fullness. Every sense engaged, but never overwhelmed, every detail contributing to an overall sense of harmony and peace. A sound draws your attention upward, the soft flutter of wings as doves settle into their evening roosts somewhere in the upper reaches of the building. You catch a glimpse of movement against the darkening sky, the graceful silhouettes of birds returning home for the night. Their presence adds another layer to the sense of welcome here. Even the wildlife has found sanctuary within these walls. The upper floors of the Riad rise around the courtyard like protective walls, their windows glowing softly with interior light. Some windows are fitted with intricate wooden screens that filter the light into geometric patterns, while others stand open to the evening air, white curtains moving gently in the breeze like slow-motion flags of peace. You complete your circuit of the walkway and find yourself back where you started. But everything looks different now. The courtyard has transformed in the growing twilight, becoming more intimate, more magical. The fountain's water catches and reflects the lantern light, creating tiny dancing points of illumination that seem to float on the surface like fallen stars. The whole space pulses gently with warm light and cool shadow, with the quiet energy of a place perfectly at peace with itself. Standing here in this welcoming courtyard, surrounded by centuries of accumulated serenity, you feel yourself settling into a deeper level of calm. This is more than just a beautiful space. It's a sanctuary that has been refined over generations to provide exactly what you need in this moment. Perfect shelter, perfect quiet, perfect acceptance of your presence within its ancient embrace. As this sense of belonging settles over you, you become aware of a gentle presence approaching. Soft footsteps on the smooth stone, accompanied by the delicate chiming of metal against ceramic. Your host appears as if summoned by the Riad's own hospitality, carrying a hammered silver tray that catches fragments of the filtered light. The tray holds a tall glass teapot, its clear sides revealing the warm amber of freshly brewed mint tea, with bright green leaves dancing in lazy spirals through the liquid. Without ceremony or fuss, A small round table is placed beside one of the low cushioned seats that ring the courtyard's edge. The table itself is a work of art, inlaid mother of pearl, creating intricate geometric patterns that seem to shift and shimmer as your perspective changes. The silver tray settles onto this surface with the softest whisper of metal on wood, and you're invited with a gentle gesture to take your place among the plump cushions that have supported countless guests before you. The cushions receive you with the perfect give of fabrics that have been carefully chosen for comfort. Beneath you, layers of woven textiles create a nest of softness. Rich burgundy velvet, intricate brocade in deep blues and golds, and beneath it all, the firm support of cushions filled with something that yields just enough to cradle your form. As you settle, the fabrics release the faintest hint of cedar and rose, scents that speak of careful storage in wooden chests lined with aromatic herbs. Your host moves with the unhurried grace of someone for whom hospitality is not just custom but art. The teapot lifts high and the first pour begins, a stream of golden liquid that arcs through the air with practiced precision, landing in the small glass cup with barely a sound. This is not merely serving tea. It's a meditation in motion, a ritual that has been refined over centuries to create not just a beverage, but a moment of shared humanity. Steam rises from the glass in delicate wisps, carrying with it the most wonderful fragrance. The mint is fresh and bright, but there's something more. Hints of orange blossom, perhaps a touch of verbena, and underneath it all, the deep, rich foundation of green tea that has been perfectly steeped. The glass itself is warm in your hands, and you can feel the heat radiating gently through the thin walls, warming your palms and fingers with its welcoming temperature. The first sip is revelation. The tea moves across your tongue like liquid serenity, the mint bright and cooling despite the warmth, the sweetness perfectly balanced, not cloying, but gentle enough to enhance rather than mask the complex flavors beneath. There's a subtle astringency from the green tea that gives way to the clean, fresh finish of the mint. And as you swallow, you feel the warmth travel down through your chest, spreading a sense of comfort that seems to reach into every corner of your being. Your host settles nearby, not watching you drink, but simply present, embodying that particular form of Moroccan hospitality that offers companionship without intrusion, attention without scrutiny. The silence that falls between you is comfortable, filled only by the gentle sounds that make up the Riad's evening symphony, the distant splash of water in an unseen fountain, the soft whisper of wind through the upper galleries, the barely perceptible settling sounds of ancient walls cooling in the evening air. As you continue to sip your tea, you notice how the ritual itself becomes a form of meditation. The lifting of the glass, the pause to appreciate the aroma, the careful taste that lets each flavor register fully before the next sip. It all slows time, creating a pocket of tranquility that seems to exist outside the ordinary flow of hours and minutes. Each sip brings a deeper sense of calm, not just from the tea itself, but from the entire ceremony of sitting quietly in this beautiful space, being cared for without fuss or expectation. The light continues to shift as evening deepens, and small lanterns begin to flicker to life around the courtyard's perimeter. They don't blaze on all at once, but seem to awaken gradually, like stars appearing in a darkening sky. The warm glow they cast transforms the space once again, turning the white walls to soft cream, deepening the shadows between the arches, and creating pools of golden light that seem to invite contemplation and rest. From somewhere in the distance comes the sound of conversation, other guests perhaps, or the household staff moving about their evening duties. But these sounds don't intrude. Instead, they add to the sense of being part of something larger, of being held within a community of people who understand the value of moving slowly, of taking time for simple pleasures, of recognizing that the sharing of mint tea is not just hospitality, but a form of communion with tradition and place. Your glass empties gradually, and without being asked, your host refills it with that same graceful arc of golden liquid. This second glass tastes subtly different. The flavors have had more time to meld, the mint perhaps a touch more mellow, the tea a shade richer. You realize that this too is part of the ritual, the way mint tea evolves with each pouring, offering slightly different pleasures with each glass, encouraging you to stay, to settle more deeply into the moment and the place. The evening air grows cooler, and you pull your lightweight shawl more closely around your shoulders. The fabric is soft cotton, probably woven somewhere in Morocco's Atlas Mountains, and it carries its own faint scent of the local lavender that grows wild on the hillsides. Wrapped in this gentle warmth, holding your glass of fragrant tea, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the courtyard, you feel yourself entering a state of profound relaxation. Not the heavy tiredness that comes from exhaustion, but the deep contentment that arises when body, mind, and spirit all find themselves exactly where they need to be. Through the open doorway that leads to the street, you can hear the distant sounds of Marrakech settling into evening. The occasional call of vendors closing their shops, the soft clatter of donkey hooves on cobblestones, voices speaking in Arabic and French and Berber, all blending into the complex urban lullaby of a city that has been singing people to sleep for nearly 1,000 years. But these sounds feel far away, filtered through the thick walls and the layered courtyards that separate you from the bustling world outside. Here in your pocket of peace, time moves at a different pace. There is no rush, no schedule to keep, no urgency of any kind. There is only the gentle warmth of mint tea in your hands, the soft cushions supporting your relaxed form, the play of lamplight on ancient walls, and the quiet presence of hospitality that asks nothing of you except that you allow yourself to receive its gifts. Your shoulders drop another degree, your breathing deepens further, and with each exhale, you release another layer of the tension and complexity that marked your arrival in this magical place. The realization comes gradually, like the slow brightening of dawn, that this simple act, sitting quietly with tea in a beautiful courtyard, is transforming you in ways both subtle and profound. The mint tea is not just warming your body, but awakening your senses to nuances of flavor and fragrance you might otherwise have missed. The cushions are not just supporting your physical form, but teaching you something about the art of true comfort. The gentle attention of your host is not just courtesy, but a masterclass in the generous spirit that makes genuine hospitality possible. This deepening awareness becomes the foundation for what happens next. Your host rises with that same unhurried grace, the hem of their kaftan catching briefly on the edge of the cushion before flowing free. They gesture toward a narrow staircase tucked into the far corner of the courtyard, its first few steps visible beneath a graceful archway, the rest disappearing upward into shadow. "Would you like to see the terrace?" they ask, and something in their voice suggests this isn't merely an invitation, but an offering, a chance to witness the Riad from an entirely different perspective. You find yourself nodding, drawn by curiosity and the promise of elevation. Rising from the cushions feels like emerging from a warm bath, your body having settled so completely into their embrace that standing requires a moment of gentle recalibration. The mint tea has left a coolness on your tongue that mingles beautifully with the night air, and as you follow your host toward the staircase, you notice how the sound of your footsteps changes as you move from the soft rugs to the smooth tadelact floor, then to the first stone step. The staircase is narrow, but not uncomfortably so, built for contemplative ascent rather than hurried passage. Each step is worn smooth by decades of feet, the stone slightly concave in the center, where countless visitors have made this same journey upward. Your hand finds the wall naturally, and you're surprised by its texture. Not the cool, hard surface you expected, but something warmer, slightly rough, like fine sandpaper that has been kissed by desert winds. The walls seem to hold the day's warmth, releasing it slowly into the cooler night air. As you climb, the sounds of the courtyard begin to fade, replaced by something entirely different, the vast, open sound of night sky. It's remarkable how audible space can be, how the ear can detect the difference between the contained acoustics of the courtyard and the limitless expanse that waits above. Your host moves ahead of you with the confidence of someone who has made this climb countless times, their kaftan creating a soft whisper of fabric against stone with each step. The staircase curves gently as it rises, following the natural architecture of the Riad's ancient bones. Through small openings in the wall, not quite windows, more like purposeful gaps in the stonework, you catch glimpses of other courtyards, other lives unfolding in the gentle illumination of oil lamps and candles. A fragment of conversation drifts past in Arabic, punctuated by soft laughter. Somewhere, someone is playing an oud, the melody floating through the night air like incense made audible. The temperature shifts as you climb, the retained warmth of the stone walls giving way to the cooler touch of night air that grows more pronounced with each step. By the time you reach the final turn of the staircase, you can feel the openness above you, like a presence, vast, welcoming, alive with possibility. Your host pauses at a wooden door, its surface painted in deep blue that appears almost black in the dim light, decorated with brass studs arranged in geometric patterns that seem to echo the tilework below. The door opens not with the creak you might expect from such an ancient building, but with a whisper of well-oiled hinges, and suddenly you are stepping out into a world transformed. The rooftop terrace spreads before you like a secret garden suspended between earth and stars, a space that exists in its own realm, connected to but separate from the life below. The first thing that strikes you is the sheer vastness of the sky. After the intimate enclosure of the courtyard, the infinite dome of night feels almost overwhelming in its generosity. The terrace itself is a masterpiece of practical beauty. Low walls topped with cushioned seating run along the perimeter, creating intimate alcoves for conversation or solitary contemplation. The flooring is a patchwork of different materials, some areas paved with the same warm stone as the courtyard below, others covered in thick rug that your feet sink into slightly, still others bare wood that creak softly under your weight with the satisfied sound of timber that has weathered many seasons. Scattered throughout the space are low tables, some round, some square, some octagonal, each one different from the others, as if collected over many years from various corners of Morocco. On several tables, lanterns cast pools of amber light, their metalwork creating intricate shadow patterns that dance and shift with the slight breeze that moves freely across this elevated space. The lanterns are not electric, but hold actual flames, oil lamps and thick candles that flicker with an aliveness that no artificial light could match. But it's the view that truly takes your breath away. From this vantage point, Marrakech unfolds in every direction like a living map drawn in lights and shadows. The Medina spreads out below you, a labyrinth of flat rooftops, courtyards, and narrow alleyways that seem to pulse with the quiet energy of a city settling into night. Here and there, other rooftop terraces are visible, some lit, some dark, each one a small world unto itself. Television antennas and satellite dishes create an unexpected modern sculpture garden against the ancient backdrop, a reminder that this is a living city, not a museum. To the west, beyond the immediate maze of the old city, the Atlas Mountains rise like sleeping giants against the star-filled sky. They appear closer in the night air, their peaks catching and holding the faint light in ways that make them seem almost luminous. The air carries hints of their presence, cooler currents that speak of snow-capped heights and cedar forests, mixing with the warmer air rising from the city below. Your host leads you to a corner of the terrace where cushions are arranged around a low table, set with fresh mint tea and small glasses that catch the lantern light like captured stars. This tea service is different from the one below. The glasses are smaller, more delicate, the metal tray decorated with a pattern you haven't seen before. The mint seems fresher here too, as if the elevation and the night air have sharpened its essence. As you settle onto the cushions, you become aware of the soundscape that surrounds this elevated sanctuary. The city below provides a gentle murmur, distant voices, the occasional motorbike navigating the narrow streets, the call of night vendors whose words are indistinct but whose rhythmic cadences carry clearly through the air. Closer, on this very rooftop, you can hear the soft fluttering of fabric in the breeze, the tiny metallic chimes of the lanterns swaying slightly, the whisper of wind moving through the small potted plants that line the edges of the terrace. These plants deserve special attention. They're not the lush, watered abundance you might find in a European garden, but desert-adapted species chosen specifically for their ability to thrive in this elevated, exposed environment. Succulents with thick, waxy leaves cluster in terracotta pots, their shapes architectural and strange. Small palm trees in large planters create pockets of privacy and wind protection. Herbs, rosemary, thyme, sage, release their fragrances into the night air every time the breeze stirs their leaves, creating an ever-changing aromatherapy that mingles with the mint tea and the faint smokiness of the oil lamps. The temperature here is perfect for this time of night, warm enough that you're completely comfortable, but with enough coolness in the air to keep you alert and present. The breeze moves differently up here than it did in the protected courtyard below. There, air movement was subtle, almost unnoticeable. Here, it's a constant presence, not strong enough to be disruptive, but persistent enough to remind you that you're elevated, exposed to the larger patterns of atmosphere and the weather that flow over the city. Your host pours the tea with the same careful attention they showed below. But here, the ritual takes on additional dimensions. The slight breeze requires small adjustments, turning slightly to protect the glasses from wind, pouring at an angle that accounts for the movement of air. The tea itself seems to release its fragrance more readily in this environment, as if the open space gives the mint room to fully express itself. As you sip, you find yourself naturally drawn to explore the view from different angles. Rising from the cushions, you move to the edge of the terrace where the low wall provides the perfect height for comfortable leaning. The stone is still warm from the day's sun, pleasant against your forearms as you settle in to really study the vista before you. From this new position, you can see deeper into the maze of the Medina, catching glimpses of courtyards similar to the one you've just left. Small rectangles of light and life tucked away within the larger organism of the city. Each courtyard tells its own story through the fragments visible from this height. In one, laundry hangs motionless in the still air, ghostly shapes that will catch the morning breeze. In another, a family seems to be sharing a late meal, the warm glow of their space creating an intimate island in the darkness. A third shows only the reflection of water, a fountain or pool catching and holding the light like a mirror laid flat against the earth. The interplay of public and private space becomes fascinatingly clear from this elevated perspective. The rooftops themselves form a kind of secondary neighborhood, connected by sightlines and shared sky, but separated by the discrete boundaries of walls and different levels. You realize you're participating in an ancient form of urban living, where privacy and community exist in careful balance, where the vertical dimension of architecture creates layers of experience and relationship. Moving along the perimeter of the terrace, you discover that each side offers its own character and view. The eastern edge looks toward the newer parts of the city, where modern buildings rise in geometric patterns quite different from the organic maze of the Medina. Streetlights create rivers of illumination that flow in straight lines, a contrast to the scattered, irregular lighting of the old city. The southern view captures more of the Medina's heart, where the famous Jamar el-Fnar square would be. Though from this distance and in this light, it's more a sense of greater activity and energy than anything specifically visible. But it's when you turn your attention upward that the true magic of this space reveals itself. The sky from this rooftop terrace is extraordinary. vast and clear in a way that urban dwellers rarely experience. The absence of tall buildings and the relatively low level of light pollution in this part of the city means that stars are actually visible, not just the brightest few that survive in most urban environments, but layer upon layer of celestial light that creates depth and dimension in the darkness above. The moon, in whatever phase it happens to be tonight, casts its own subtle illumination across the scene, silvering the edges of the mountain peaks and creating a secondary landscape of shadows and gentle highlights across the rooftops below. The interplay between the warm amber light of the lanterns and the cooler silver light of the moon creates a visual richness that seems to shift and change as your eyes adjust and readjust to the different qualities of illumination. As your gaze drifts across this enchanted landscape, you become aware of a subtle shift in the air itself. The temperature is beginning to drop as the sun sinks lower toward the horizon, and with this change comes a new quality to the evening, a sense of anticipation, as if the entire city and the mountains beyond are preparing for something extraordinary. The warmth that has been radiating up from the courtyard stones all day is now beginning to dissipate, replaced by the first whisper of coolness that speaks of the desert night to come. From your vantage point on the rooftop terrace, you turn your attention westward, beyond the labyrinthine streets of the Medina, beyond the modern districts with their palm-lined boulevards, to where the earth itself rises up to meet the sky. There, in the distance, the Atlas Mountains stand like ancient guardians, their peaks catching the last strong rays of the sun. The mountains appear almost purple at this hour, their ridges and valleys creating a dramatic silhouette against the deepening sky. Each peak seems to have its own character, some sharp and defined, others rounded by countless centuries of wind and weather. The sunset unfolding before you is not the quick, dramatic affair you might witness at the ocean's edge. Instead, it unfolds with the measured pace of the desert itself, each moment distinct and worthy of attention. The sun, now a perfect golden orb, hangs suspended above the mountain peaks, appearing larger somehow than it does at midday, as if the approaching horizon has magnified its presence. The light it casts has taken on that particular quality that photographers call the golden hour, warm, honeyed, and forgiving, transforming everything it touches into something more beautiful than it appeared just moments before. The sky around the sun begins its transformation from the clear blue of afternoon into the first hints of what will become a magnificent display. Near the sun itself, the sky takes on shades of pale yellow and cream, colors so subtle they seem to shimmer and change as you watch. Moving outward from this central point of light, the yellows gradually deepen into soft oranges, then into warmer amber tones that seem to pulse gently with their own inner radiance. Higher up, where the sky remains untouched by the sun's immediate influence, the blue deepens from its afternoon clarity into something richer and more complex. You settle more comfortably into your position on the terrace, perhaps adjusting the cushions beneath you or reaching for the small glass of mint tea that sits cooling on the low table beside you. The glass is warm to the touch, but not hot, the perfect temperature for this transitional moment of the evening. As you lift it to your lips, The familiar aroma of fresh mint mingles with the cooling air, and you catch other scents carried on the gentle breeze. The lingering sweetness of orange blossoms from a nearby courtyard, the earthy smell of the mountains themselves, and something indefinable that speaks of vast open spaces and endless horizons. As you sip the tea, your eyes return to the unfolding spectacle in the western sky. The sun has dropped noticeably lower now, and the colors are beginning to intensify. What started as subtle hints of warmth have developed into more pronounced bands of color that stretch across a wider expanse of sky. The oranges have deepened into shades that remind you of ripe persimmons and glowing embers. Above these, the first touches of pink begin to appear. Not the bright, saturated pink of flowers, but something softer and more ethereal, like the inside of certain seashells or the blush on a perfect peach. The mountains themselves are participating in this daily transformation. Their surfaces, which appeared almost uniformly purple from a distance, now reveal subtle variations in color and texture as the angled light plays across their faces. Some slopes catch the direct rays and glow with a warm reddish hue, while others remain in shadow, their surfaces a deep, mysterious blue-gray that seems to hold secrets from ages past. Occasionally, you can make out what might be a village clinging to one of the distant mountainsides, a small cluster of lights beginning to twinkle as the inhabitants prepare for their own evening rituals. Below you, the city of Marrakech spreads out like a living map, its various districts and neighborhoods clearly delineated by the changing light. The Medina, with its maze of narrow streets and traditional buildings, appears as a dense tapestry of terracotta and ochre, punctuated here and there by the green of hidden gardens and the white of mosque minarets that catch the light like beacons. Beyond the ancient walls, the modern city reveals itself in broader streets and different architectural styles, while further out still, you can glimpse the edge of the palm groves that have sustained this oasis city for over 1,000 years. The air around you carries sounds that seem perfectly matched to this transitional hour. From somewhere in the distance comes the soft, melodic call to prayer from one of the city's many mosques, the human voice rising and falling in ancient patterns that speak of devotion and continuity across centuries. Closer at hand, you hear the gentle cooing of doves that have made their homes in the nooks and crannies of the Riad's walls, their soft conversation a counterpoint to the more distant sounds of the awakening evening city. The sun continues its steady descent, and now you can see it beginning to touch the highest peaks of the Atlas Mountains. At this moment of contact, something magical happens. The light seems to concentrate and intensify, creating what feels like a dialogue between sky and earth. The peak that the sun touches first appears to glow from within, as if it has captured some essential quality of the light and is holding it, transforming it, before releasing it back into the world as something even more beautiful than what it received. As this celestial dance continues, the colors in the sky deepen and spread. The pinks that appeared so tentatively just minutes ago now stretch across a broader canvas, ranging from the palest rose to deeper salmon and coral tones that pulse gently with the rhythm of the fading day. Above these warm hues, the first hints of purple begin to appear, not the deep purple of the distant mountains, but the soft, graduated purple that speaks of approaching twilight. These colors don't exist in sharp bands or defined sections. Instead, they blend and merge with one another like watercolors on damp paper, each shade flowing naturally into the next. You become aware that your breathing has naturally synchronized with this gentle spectacle, each inhalation and exhalation matching the slow, measured pace of the sun's descent and the sky's transformation. There's something profoundly calming about this rhythm, this sense of being connected to one of nature's most reliable and beautiful daily performances. Your body seems to understand intuitively that this is a time for stillness, for observation, for allowing the day's activities and concerns to settle into their proper perspective. The temperature continues to drop gradually, and you might draw a light shawl around your shoulders or appreciate the way the cooling air feels against your skin after the warmth of the afternoon. This gentle cooling is one of the desert's gifts. The way it releases the heat it has stored throughout the day in a measured, comfortable fashion that never feels abrupt or shocking. Instead, it's like being gradually welcomed into a different phase of the daily cycle, invited to experience a gentler, more contemplative version of the world you inhabited just hours before. As the sun sinks lower still, now partially obscured by the mountain peaks, the light that reaches you takes on an even more golden quality. This light seems to have weight and substance as it illuminates the terrace around you, picking out details that might have gone unnoticed in the flatter light of midday. The geometric patterns carved into the stone railings become more pronounced, their shadows creating intricate secondary patterns that shift and change as the light moves across them. The surfaces of the ceramic tiles that decorate various elements of the terrace seem to glow with their own inner light, their glazes reflecting and refracting the golden rays in countless tiny sparkles. From your position, you can see other rooftop terraces throughout the city, many of them occupied by people engaged in their own version of this evening ritual. Some figures move about their terraces, tending to potted plants or adjusting furniture, while others sit in contemplation much as you do, all of you participating in this shared but individual experience of witnessing the day's end. There's something comforting about this knowledge that across the city, across the region, people are pausing to acknowledge this daily miracle, each bringing their own perspective and appreciation to the universal experience of sunset. The sun is now more than halfway behind the mountains, and the sky's color palette has expanded to include deeper, richer tones. The oranges have developed into burnt orange and deep amber, while the pinks have evolved into rose and coral shades that seem to pulse gently against the darkening blue of the upper atmosphere. In the western sky, directly around where the sun meets the mountains, there's a concentration of golden light so intense it's almost difficult to look at directly, as if all the day's accumulated brightness has been distilled into this one perfect, luminous moment. The city below you is beginning its own transformation as lights start to appear in windows and along streets. These human-made sources of illumination create warm points of yellow and amber that complement rather than compete with the natural light show overhead, Street lamps flicker on along the main boulevards, while in the Medina, the softer glow of lanterns and interior lights creates a more intimate, mysterious quality of illumination that seems perfectly suited to the ancient streets and traditional architecture. As you continue to watch, you notice that the light is beginning to change the apparent distance and relationship between objects in your view. Mountains that seemed clearly defined just minutes ago now appear to merge and separate in different configurations as the changing light creates new patterns of highlight and shadow. The city itself seems to shift and rearrange as different areas catch or lose the light, creating an ever-changing panorama that rewards continued tension with constantly new discoveries and perspectives. This shifting panorama holds your attention until you notice that somewhere below, perhaps from the kitchen courtyard or one of the ground-level terraces, the warm scent of slow-cooking spices begins to drift upward on the cooling evening air. Cinnamon and ginger, the earthy depth of turmeric, and something sweet and complex that might be preserved lemons or dried apricots. The aroma carries with it an invitation, a gentle suggestion that perhaps it's time to descend from this elevated perch and discover what culinary magic is unfolding in the quieter corners of the Riad. You make your way down the narrow stone steps, each footfall creating a soft whisper against the worn surfaces that have welcomed countless guests over the decades. The handrail, carved from what feels like cedar, is smooth under your palm, polished by years of gentle contact. As you descend, the sounds of the city become more muffled, filtered through the thick walls and absorbed by the courtyard's intimate dimensions, while those cooking aromas grow richer and more complex with each step downward. The central courtyard greets you with a different energy now than it held during the afternoon, where sunlight once created sharp contrasts of light and shadow. The approaching evening has softened everything into a more unified palette of warm honey and amber tones. The fountain continues its gentle conversation, but the sound seems more intimate now, less about cooling the air and more about creating a peaceful auditory backdrop for whatever evening ritual is about to unfold. You notice that someone has arranged a low table near one of the courtyard's alcoves, positioning it where the last of the natural light mingles with the warm glow of several candles of varying heights. The table itself is a work of art, its surface inlaid with intricate geometric patterns in mother-of-pearl and dark wood that catch and reflect the flickering candlelight in subtle, ever-changing ways. Cushions covered in richly textured fabrics surround the table, their surfaces inviting you to settle in and become part of this carefully orchestrated evening scene. The candles themselves tell their own story. Some are thick and substantial, their flames steady and confident, while others are more slender, their light dancing more playfully in the gentle air movement created by the courtyard's natural ventilation. The wax appears to be natural beeswax, and as it warms, it releases its own subtle honey-sweet fragrance that blends beautifully with the cooking spices. You can see that each candle has been burning for different lengths of time, creating varying heights and pools of melted wax that suggest this lighting arrangement has been lovingly tended throughout the day. As you settle onto one of the cushions, you discover that the fabric beneath you has its own particular texture and story. The outer covering appears to be silk, but with a weight and substance that speaks of quality and age. Beneath this, you can feel the firm support of what might be horsehair or another traditional stuffing material, something that provides comfort without being overly soft, maintaining the kind of supportive structure that allows you to sit comfortably for extended periods in this cross-legged position that feels so natural in this setting. From somewhere nearby, perhaps through an arched doorway that leads to the kitchen areas, you hear the soft sound of pottery being gently moved and arranged. There's a musical quality to these sounds. The way ceramic surfaces touch and separate, the soft whisper of lids being lifted and replaced, the gentle bubble and simmer of something cooking slowly and patiently. These are the sounds of careful preparation, of ingredients being coaxed rather than hurried, of cooking as meditation rather than mere necessity. The person preparing your meal moves with an unhurried grace that you can sense even without seeing them directly. There's something in the rhythm of their movements, the patient intervals between sounds, that suggests deep familiarity with this process. This is someone who has prepared countless tagines, who understands the precise timing required for each ingredient, who knows by scent and sound when each element has reached its perfect moment of readiness. A gentle evening breeze moves through the courtyard, and with it comes another wave of those complex cooking aromas. Now you can detect the warm, nutty fragrance of almonds, perhaps being toasted or already incorporated into the dish. There's the bright note of fresh herbs, cilantro or parsley, and underneath it all, the rich, satisfying base note of meat that has been cooking slowly enough to become tender while absorbing all the surrounding flavors. The candlelight creates its own small ecosystem of warmth and illumination around your table. Beyond this circle, the courtyard retreats into gentle shadows, but within this sphere, everything feels intimate and immediate. The flame patterns cast by the various candles create an ever-changing display on the textured walls, where the traditional tadelact plasterwork catches and reflects the light in ways that seem to make the surfaces themselves glow with inner warmth. You begin to notice how the candlelight affects your perception of colors and textures. The geometric patterns inlaid in the table surface seem to shift and rearrange themselves as the flames move, creating an almost hypnotic display that rewards quiet contemplation. The colors in the cushion fabrics deepen and become more complex in this light, revealing subtle variations and details that weren't apparent in the stronger daylight hours. The sound of the fountain seems different now too, more musical and rhythmic, as if the water itself is responding to the evening's quieter energy. Each drop as it falls seems more distinct, more purposeful, contributing to a soundscape that feels perfectly calibrated for relaxation and contemplation. The acoustic properties of the courtyard create a sense of being held within sound, surrounded by gentle auditory textures that never demand attention, but always reward it when given. From the kitchen area comes the soft sound of footsteps on stone, and you sense rather than see someone approaching. The steps are measured and peaceful, carrying with them the confidence of someone who is about to share something they've prepared with love and attention. You can hear the soft whisper of fabric, perhaps traditional robes moving with unhurried grace, and the gentle sound of pottery being carefully transported. The person who emerges from the kitchen shadows moves like a part of the evening itself, carrying what appears to be a traditional tagine pot with the same reverence one might reserve for a sacred object. The conical lid, with its distinctive shape designed to return condensed steam to the cooking dish below, seems to glow in the candlelight like something crafted from warm earth and shaped by generations of skilled hands. As the tagine is placed on a protective trivet at the center of your low table, you can hear the gentle bubbling still occurring within, a soft, rhythmic sound that speaks of ingredients still mingling and melding in their final moments of preparation. The ceramic surface of the pot radiates warmth that you can feel on your face and hands, a gentle heat that seems to extend the day's warmth into the cooling evening air. The ceremony of opening the tagine becomes a moment of anticipation and reverence. The server's hands, confident and practiced, lift the conical lid with a careful motion that prevents any loss of the precious steam within. As the lid rises, it releases a cloud of aromatic vapor that seems to carry the essence of Morocco itself. The scents that emerge are complex beyond description, each breath revealing new layers and combinations that speak of ingredients chosen with wisdom and combined with skill. What is revealed beneath the lid exceeds even the promises made by those wonderful aromas. The dish appears to be a chicken tagine, but one prepared with an artistry that elevates it far beyond simple sustenance. Pieces of tender meat nestle among what appear to be preserved lemons, their yellow rinds bright even in the candlelight, and dried apricots that have absorbed the cooking liquid until they seem to glow like amber jewels. The sauce itself is a study in the perfect balance of flavors and textures, rich enough to carry complex spice notes, but not so heavy as to mask the individual ingredients. You can see whole almonds scattered throughout, some still showing their natural shape, while others have begun to break down and contribute their essence to the overall dish. Fresh herbs, bright green against the warm amber and golden tones of the other ingredients, provide visual contrast and promise bright, fresh notes to balance the deeper, more complex flavors. The bread that accompanies this feast appears to have been baked fresh today, its crust showing the slight irregularities and golden brown color that speak of traditional ovens and time-honored techniques. The server breaks it with their hands rather than cutting it, releasing steam and revealing an interior that looks both substantial and tender, perfect for scooping up the rich sauce and carrying the complex flavors to your palate. As you begin to eat, using the bread in the traditional manner, each bite becomes a small revelation. The flavors are complex but harmonious, each spice contributing its voice to a choir rather than competing for solo attention. The meat falls apart at the gentlest pressure, evidence of long, patient cooking that has transformed tough fibers into something silk smooth and rich. The preserved lemons provide bright, almost musical high notes that dance across your palate, while the apricots contribute a subtle sweetness that seems to make all the other flavors more vibrant and distinct. The almonds add not just flavor, but texture, some providing a satisfying crunch, while others have cooked long enough to become creamy additions to the sauce. Each spoonful, each piece of bread loaded with sauce and ingredients tells the story of a culinary tradition that has been refined and perfected over centuries, passed down through generations of cooks who understood that preparing food is an act of hospitality, creativity, and love. The tradition of hospitality expressed through food creates a bridge between strangers. And as you savor the last spoonful of this magnificent tagine, you become part of that ancient chain of welcome and warmth. The clay bowl still radiates gentle heat against the wooden table. The lingering fragrance of spices seems to weave itself into the very air around you. Outside, the sun has begun its slow descent toward the horizon, and the quality of light filtering through the courtyard has shifted from the bright clarity of afternoon to something softer, more golden, more forgiving. The sounds of Marrakech are beginning their evening transformation, a subtle symphony that unfolds in layers as the day releases its hold on the city. From somewhere beyond the Riad walls, you hear the distant call of a street vendor, his voice carrying a melodic cadence that speaks of dates and oranges, of fresh bread still warm from stone ovens. The call rises and falls like a song, each syllable carefully crafted to carry through the narrow alleyways and reach potential customers tucked away in their own private courtyards. There's something deeply comforting about this human voice threading through the evening air, a reminder that life continues its gentle rhythm all around you. The fountains throughout the Riad seem to have found their own evening voice as well. The central fountain in the courtyard below continues its soft burbling, but now other water features join the chorus. A smaller fountain, tucked into an alcove, somewhere to your left, sends up delicate splashing sounds, while what must be a wall fountain creates the faintest trickling melody from deeper within the building's maze-like structure. Water has always been precious in this desert city, and the multiple fountains speak not just of abundance, but of intention, each one carefully placed to create acoustic pockets of peace throughout the Riad. The swallows have begun their evening hunt, and their calls create bright punctuation marks in the air above the courtyard. You can hear the whisper of their wings as they dive and wheel through the space, catching insects in aerial displays of impossible grace. Sometimes one passes close enough that you catch the soft rush of air displaced by its flight, a barely perceptible coolness against your skin. Their movements are erratic, yet purposeful, creating an ever-changing pattern of sound that keeps your attention gently engaged without demanding focus. From the kitchen areas somewhere within the Riad comes the soft percussion of preparation for the evening meal. The gentle thwack of a knife against a wooden cutting board creates a steady rhythm, occasionally punctuated by the clink of pottery or the soft whoosh of grain being poured from one container to another. These sounds speak of capable hands and practiced motions, of meals being prepared with the same care and attention that went into your tagine. There's something deeply reassuring about hearing food being prepared nearby. It connects you to the most fundamental of human activities, the daily ritual of nourishment and care. The air itself seems to be settling into its evening mood. A slight breeze has begun to stir, barely noticeable at first, but gradually gaining presence. It carries new scents with it. The green smell of herbs growing in terracotta pots, the dry, dusty fragrance of the city beyond the walls, the lingering sweetness of orange blossoms from trees scattered throughout Marrakech's gardens and courtyards. This breeze finds its voice in small ways. The soft rustle of leaves from potted plants around the Riad, the nearly inaudible whisper as it moves through doorways and along corridors, the gentle flutter of fabric from awnings and curtains responding to its touch. Somewhere in the distance, you become aware of music, not the structured performance of musicians, but the organic emergence of sound that happens when people gather as the day winds down. A guitar being tuned, its strings creating those familiar ascending notes that speak of music about to begin. The soft tap of fingers against a drum skin, testing the sound, finding the right tone. Perhaps a voice humming a melody, wordless but full of expression. These sounds drift to you fragmented and intermittent, like pieces of a conversation heard through open windows, creating not distraction, but rather a sense of being connected to the larger community that surrounds you. The light continues its gradual transformation, and with it comes a change in the visual rhythm of the Riad. Shadows that were sharp and defined during the heat of the day now have softer edges, creating pools of gentle dimness that seem to invite quiet contemplation. The geometric patterns of the tilework begin to reveal different aspects of their design as the angle of illumination shifts, creating subtle plays of light and shadow that weren't visible hours earlier. The warm ochre of the walls seems to glow more richly now, as if the stone itself is reflecting back all the sunlight it absorbed during the day. You notice that your own breathing has unconsciously synchronized with this evening rhythm. Each inhale seems to draw in not just air, but the essence of this peaceful moment. The warmth, the gentle sounds, the sense of being perfectly placed in time and space. Each exhale releases any lingering tension from the day, allowing you to settle more completely into the experience of simply being present. The tagine bowl before you has cooled now, but the satisfaction of the meal continues to radiate through your body, a warm contentment that enhances your receptivity to all these subtle evening pleasures. The cats of the Riad are beginning to make their presence known. You hear the soft pad of paws on stone somewhere below, followed by a contented purr that seems to embody the spirit of afternoon leisure. A different cat responds from another direction, not with a meow, but with that peculiar chirping sound that cats sometimes make when greeting familiar humans. The rug's pattern consists of simple geometric shapes that seem to shift slightly in the candlelight, creating the illusion of gentle movement even in perfect stillness. Against one wall stands a tall wooden armoire, its doors carved with intricate patterns that cast fascinating shadows in the lamp's glow. Inside, you discover it has been prepared for your stay with everything you might need for comfort during the night. An extra silk throw in case the temperature drops, a cotton robe soft as air itself, and even a small ceramic cup for water, glazed in the same blue-green as the washing basin. The room's acoustics create their own form of comfort. The stone walls and high ceiling work together to soften every sound. creating an almost cathedral-like quality that makes even the smallest noise, the whisper of silk against skin, the soft pad of bare feet on wool, seem dignified and peaceful. From the courtyard below, the fountain's gentle music rises like a lullaby, its rhythm so steady and soothing it quickly becomes less a sound than a heartbeat, something you feel as much as hear. Through the room's single window, which faces inward toward the courtyard rather than out to the busy streets beyond, you can see the interplay of lamplight and starlight on the fountain's surface. The view frames the scene like a living painting, one that changes subtly moment by moment as the water moves and the light shifts. Sometimes a palm frond drifts into the frame, stirring gently in the night breeze. Occasionally, the shadow of a bird passes overhead, probably one of the doves that make their home in the Riad's upper reaches. The window itself deserves attention, its frame carved from the same cedar as the furniture, its opening fitted with wooden shutters that can be adjusted to control both light and airflow. Right now, they stand partially open, allowing the perfect amount of the garden's night-scented air to circulate through the room while maintaining privacy and the sense of protective enclosure that makes this space feel so secure. As you begin to settle into this carefully prepared environment, every surface you touch seems to have been chosen for its ability to enhance rest. The silk sheets feel cool initially, then quickly warm to match your body temperature, creating a cocoon of perfect comfort. The pillows arrange themselves around your head and shoulders as if they were designed specifically for your dimensions, supporting you without any sense of pressure or constraint. Even the act of extinguishing the brass lamp becomes part of the evening's ritual. The small chain that controls it moves silently, and as the pierced metal shade stops casting its patterns on the walls, the room settles into the softer illumination provided by the two candles. This gentler light creates an even more intimate atmosphere, one that seems to encourage the transition from waking consciousness toward the threshold of dreams. The candles themselves burn with the faintest fragrance, not enough to be noticeable unless you're paying attention, but just present enough to add another layer to the room's sensory embrace. It's something floral, but not sweet, perhaps jasmine or a very light rose, mixed with the subtle bass note of the beeswax from which the candles are made. This scent mingles with the cedar, the clean smell of the fresh linens, and the faint trace of the garden's night-blooming flowers to create an atmosphere that seems designed by nature itself to encourage deep, restorative sleep. In this carefully orchestrated environment, surrounded by textures and scents and gentle sounds that have been refined over centuries of hospitality, your body begins its natural progression toward rest. The silk moves with you rather than against you, never bunching or pulling, never too warm or too cool. The pillows cradle your head at exactly the right angle to keep your neck aligned and comfortable. Even the stone walls seem to radiate a gentle warmth, as if they've been storing the day's sunshine and now release it slowly to keep the room's temperature perfectly balanced for sleep. This perfect balance of temperature and texture creates a cocoon of comfort that seems to anticipate your every need before you're even aware of it yourself. Your breathing naturally deepens as you settle more completely into the bed, And with each exhale, you can feel the day's tensions melting away from places you hadn't even realized were holding stress. The silk beneath you seems to breathe along with you, expanding and contracting ever so slightly with your movements, creating a sensation almost like floating on calm, warm water. As you lie there in this state of perfect physical comfort, your awareness begins to shift outward, beyond the immediate sensations of the bed and pillows, to the subtle sounds that fill the Riad at this deep hour of the night. The fountain in the courtyard continues its gentle conversation with the stars, but now its voice seems different than it did earlier, where before its song was bright and welcoming. Now it carries the hushed tones of nighttime confidences, water meeting stone in soft, rhythmic whispers that seem to pulse in harmony with your own heartbeat. The water's journey from the fountain's center to its edges creates layers of sound that your drowsy mind can follow like a meditation. There's the initial soft splash where the water first emerges, a delicate upward arc that catches whatever moonlight filters down into the courtyard. Then comes the gentle cascade as gravity draws it back down, each droplet finding its own path through the air before rejoining the pool below. The sound spreads outward in concentric circles of quiet music, each ring of ripples creating its own note in the fountain's nighttime symphony. Between the fountain's gentle verses, other sounds weave themselves into the Riad's nocturnal chorus. Somewhere in the building's ancient walls, wood settles with tiny, almost inaudible creaks that speak of the day's heat, finally releasing its hold on the cedar beams and olive wood doors. These sounds aren't disturbances, but rather the building's way of sighing into sleep alongside you. Each small sound, a reminder that this structure has witnessed countless peaceful nights, has cradled thousands of dreams within its protective embrace. From beyond the Riad's walls, the distant sounds of Marrakech at night drift in like fragments of a half-remembered lullaby. A horse's hooves click softly against stone, somewhere in the Medina's maze of streets, their rhythm growing fainter as the carriage moves deeper into the ancient city's heart. The sound is so gentle, so perfectly spaced, that it might be counting out the seconds until sleep claims you completely. Occasionally, a night bird calls from somewhere in the city's hidden gardens, its voice clear and sweet in the cool air, answered moments later by another from a different direction, as if the birds are passing messages across the rooftops under cover of darkness. The interplay of these sounds creates something magical, not quite music, not quite silence, but a perfect acoustic environment that seems designed specifically for rest. Your mind doesn't need to process or analyze these gentle sounds. Instead, they wash over you like an audio massage, each soft note helping to release another layer of wakefulness. The fountain provides the steady bass note of this nighttime composition, while the settling wood adds gentle percussion, and the distant city sounds contribute ethereal melodies that rise and fade like breath itself. As your body continues to sink deeper into the luxurious bedding, you become aware of how the Riad's architecture enhances these night sounds rather than blocking them out. The way the courtyard is designed, with its open center rising up through multiple levels, creates a natural acoustic chamber that gathers the fountain's song and distributes it gently throughout the building. The sound seems to rise up through the very stones, traveling through the walls in vibrations so subtle you feel them more than hear them, like the building's pulse made audible. Your room's position within this acoustic environment is perfect. You're close enough to hear every nuance of the fountain's voice, but far enough away that its song becomes part of the background rather than demanding attention. It's as if the Riad's original architects understood something profound about the relationship between sound and sleep, designing spaces where night sounds would enhance rest rather than disturb it. The thickness of the walls filters out any harsh or jarring noises from the city beyond, while allowing through only those sounds that contribute to tranquility. There's something deeply comforting about being held within this sonic embrace while lying in such physical luxury. The contrast between the coolness of the night air that drifts in through the wooden shutters and the warmth of the bed creates a perfect microclimate around your resting body. Your face feels the gentle kiss of the cooler air, fresh with hints of jasmine and orange blossom from the Riad's garden, while your body remains cocooned in the silk's gentle warmth. This temperature differential seems to signal to your nervous system that conditions are ideal for deep, restorative sleep. The interplay between the various textures surrounding you adds another layer to this sensory symphony. The smoothness of the silk against your skin contrasts beautifully with the slight roughness of the traditional wool blanket that lies folded at the bed's foot, available if the night grows cooler. Your fingers occasionally brush against the carved wooden headboard, its surface worn smooth by decades of use. Each curve and indentation shaped by skilled craftsmen who understood that beauty and comfort must work together to create true luxury. The pillow beneath your head has found that perfect balance that seems impossible to achieve anywhere but in places like this, where hospitality has been elevated to an art form over centuries. It's substantial enough to support your neck properly, but soft enough that your head seems to float rather than rest. The fabric of the pillowcase, woven from the finest cotton, feels cool against your cheek initially, but warms gradually to match your body temperature, creating a sensation of being perfectly cradled without any pressure points or uncomfortable spots. As you shift slightly to find an even more comfortable position, the entire bed responds to your movement like water, redistributing support exactly where you need it. The mattress, likely filled with materials chosen specifically for this climate and this purpose, provides firmness where your body needs support and yields gently where you need softness. It's as if the bed itself has been trained in the art of promoting rest, every component working together to create an environment where sleep comes naturally and dreams arrive gently. The room around you seems to pulse gently with the rhythm of the night. Shadows shift almost imperceptibly as whatever light filters in from the courtyard changes with the movement of clouds across the moon. These subtle variations in light and shadow don't disturb your growing drowsiness, but rather add to the sense that you're part of something larger, connected to the natural rhythms of night and day, to the ancient cycles that have governed rest and wakefulness since humans first sought shelter within walls like these. The very air in the room seems to have weight and substance, thick with the accumulated peace of countless nights like this one. It carries traces of all the scents that make this place unique: the cedar and olive wood of the construction, the slight mineral smell of the fountain's water, the lingering sweetness of the mint tea that was served earlier, and underneath it all, that indefinable scent of age and wisdom that only buildings with long histories possess. Breathing this air feels nourishing, as if each inhalation is feeding not just your body but your soul. Your thoughts, which have been growing progressively quieter and more distant, now drift like leaves on a gentle stream. There's no urgency to grasp onto any particular idea or memory. Instead, your mind has entered that peaceful state where consciousness and sleep begin to blend together. The boundary between waking and dreaming becomes increasingly fluid, and you find yourself in that magical space where you're still aware of your surroundings, but no longer actively engaging with them. The fountain's song continues to weave through your awareness, but now it sounds like something from a dream, soft and distant and infinitely soothing. Thank you for traveling with Sleepy Travel Stories. May your dreams take you to beautiful places tonight. Sleep well, and we'll see you on the next journey.